In this section, I'd like to talk about one of the origins of one of Hong Kong's characteristics, the prominence of big, mainly British firms in the colony's history. I'd like to talk in particular about why a small Liverpool-based trading partnership called John Swire and Sons came to establish itself in Hong Kong in 1870. John Swire established his trading company by 1816 in Liverpool. His sons took it over and renamed the firm John Swire and Sons after his death in 1847. This was one of many small Liverpool trading companies, mainly dealing in the trade with the Caribbean and with the northern and southern states in the United States of America. And after 1854, it also explored connections with Australia. So this was a firm which looked west, not to the east. And it was one of many such firms. There didn't appear to be anything unusual about John Swire and Sons. But in 1861, it established a branch in Shanghai of a new company, Butterfield and Swire. And it dealt in tea and in cottons, and it acted as an agent for a new shipping company, the Ocean Steamship Company, known as Blue Funnel, which was established by the engineer Alfred Holt. Swire went to Hong Kong because of Alfred Holt. Holt had invented a new form of compound engine, a new engine for steamships, which meant that his ships could travel further. They could travel 8,500 miles before needing to be refueled. And they were more economic than other steamships as well. At the start, they sailed around the southern tip of the African continent, but from 1869, they were able to sail through the Suez Canal. These ships could sail most of the way to China. Swire went as agents for Blue Funnel, first to Shanghai in 1866, establishing a branch in Yokohama, and then in 1870, establishing a new branch in Hong Kong. Hong Kong was an obvious choice. It was a rapidly growing port city with strong connections to Northeast Asia, to Shanghai, to Yokohama, and to Southeast Asia, and also to Australia. When the British had taken Hong Kong, there were many loud voices which criticised the new colony. It was a barren rock. It was disease-ridden. There was nobody there. It was the wrong place in China. It turned out actually to be a very good place in China to build a new international entrepot. Swire's trade was initially in tea, in cotton goods, and they helped the great trade, as it were, in people. Migrant labourers who went to Southeast Asia to work on plantations there as well. Swire's trade grew. In 1872, they embarked on a quite different type of business, establishing a new shipping company which ran on the Yangtze River and along the coast, and Hong Kong was the southern headquarters for the China Navigation Company. Its ships sailed out of the British colony to Australia, to Southeast Asia, and along the China coast and to Japan. In 1884, John Swire and Sons opened a wholly new venture, a sugar refinery. The Taiku Sugar Refinery was established at Shao Kei Wan on the northeast coast of the island. This seems an unlikely evolution of the company's business, but what it meant was that China Navigation Company would ship raw sugar from Southeast Asia and carry the refined white sugar to Japan, to the northern ports of China, and back to Southeast Asia. John Swire and Sons managed the firm, and its ships carried the sugar. This is also interesting because up to that point, Chinese consumers didn't use white sugar. They didn't like refined sugar, but John Swire and Sons took a bet on being able to change the Chinese market, and they did. The third big development in Hong Kong for John Swire and Sons was the opening of a new dockyard at the same site as the sugar refinery, called the太古dockyard. So what we've seen in this development is a British company being attracted to Hong Kong by its position between different parts of the world that is emerging of interconnected British trade, with the new British colonies and possessions growing in Australia and Southeast Asia. In Hong Kong, it had a very well-connected British colony in which they could establish themselves, in which they could buy land for docks, for the sugar refinery, and in which they had a supply of labour. Hong Kong proved to be a gateway to China for John Swire and Sons. It was also a gateway out of China to the world. The company's shipping connections extended to London and to Liverpool, as well as to Australia and to Southeast Asia. By 1907, after almost 40 years of business in Hong Kong, Swire was an extremely well-established company. Swire was embedded in the landscape of Hong Kong, literally because of its large dockyard and its sugar refinery, but metaphorically as well. Swire is now very strongly associated with Hong Kong, almost with Hong Kong alone. But Hong Kong was just one part of its business. A very important part of its business was South China and with connections to the Southwest, to Southeast Asia and beyond. But the company's presence extended across all of China. Its Shanghai business was very important, and it had offices all the way along the Yangtze River and into the north. Its sugar was transported to Shanghai and then deep into what the British would call the Chinese interior as well. Swire recruited young British men to come and work for it as assistants, as sugar sellers, and employed increasingly larger numbers of Chinese men and women on its ships and in its warehouses and in its dockyards and wharves across China. In this section, I've looked at the evolution of the presence of one originally quite small British firm which elbowed its way into Hong Kong and in the China market. Swire arrived in Hong Kong almost 30 years after Hong Kong was established, but theirs was an important role nonetheless in the growth of this British colony in the late 19th and into the early 20th century.